Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's Wednesday's webinar. We'll just give everyone a few minutes to come into the room and then we'll get started. Thank you for joining us today. I can see that we've still got a few more people coming in, so we'll give them maybe another 30 seconds or so to log on, and then we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this week's National Hemophilia Foundation Wednesday webinar. My name is Fiona Robinson, and I am the host of this series. In today's webinar, we will learn about the new WFH Shared Decision-Making tool. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have throughout the presentation using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We have staff members monitoring these questions, and we will present them to our speaker at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to the community beginning on Friday, July 28th. Today, I'm joined by Donna Coffin from the World Federation of Hemophilia. Donna is the Director of Research and Education at the WFH. Donna, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to hand this over to you now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Fiona. And hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. Before I actually get started and introduce myself, I will share a mini video with you, which kind of sets the tone of the WFH Shared Decision-Making tool. Just bear with me, please.
You may have heard about shared decision-making from your friends, family, or healthcare team. But what is shared decision-making? Shared decision-making is a collaborative process between you, your loved ones, and your healthcare team that considers your life goals and treatment preferences when making a treatment decision. To make an informed decision, you need accurate information about your available treatment options and a clear understanding of your values and preferences. This shared decision-making tool for hemophilia will guide you through the initial steps of shared decision-making. You will assess questions like, what are my life goals? How is my current treatment limiting my goals? What other treatments are available to me? How often will I need treatment? What are the potential side effects? Is there anyone else I want involved in my decision? All these questions and more will be addressed throughout the tool. Write down any questions you have and discuss them with your healthcare team, and together, you and your team will make a decision about your hemophilia treatment. But remember, if your preferences change, a new treatment becomes available, or you're not ready to make a decision, that's okay, and you can revisit this tool at any point in your hemophilia treatment journey. By following these steps,
I apologize for that. I cut you off.
You can make informed decisions about your hemophilia treatment.
Thank you for that. So that's just setting kind of the tone of what the WFH Shared Decision-Making tool is. And now I will go back to my presentation and share that. Correct, thank you. So hello again. My name is Donna Coffin. I'm the Director of Research and Education at the World Federation of Hemophilia. And I'm here today to talk about the WFH shared decision-making tool. I want to thank Fiona and the NHF for inviting us to share this presentation with you today. So the development of the WFH shared decision-making tool, we've been working on this for a couple of years now. There's quite a few of us who have been working on this. I'm just going to acknowledge everybody who's been working on the development here on this slide. So the working group consists of Declan Noon, Brendan Hayes of the NHF, Mark Skinner, Thomas Saunier, Courtney Thornburg, and Glenn Pierce. Myself, Julia Chadwick, and Mace Nakash from WFH staff. And we've been working with an independent consultant, Gwen Kaiser, as well as a medical education agency called Core2Ed. So it's really this group here who have been, who brought the idea to life. And today, what I'm going to do is I have a few slides leading up to the demonstration, but I'll give you a demonstration of what the shared decision-making tool looks like. It's not final yet. So what you'll see when it's launched might be a little bit different, but the presentation gives you an idea of what it looks like and how it works. And before I continue, I just want to also thank our industry partners who provided funding for us to develop this tool: BioMarine, CSL, Novo Nordisk, Pfizer, and Spark Therapeutics. So what is shared decision-making? Shared decision-making is a process, and you'll notice that the word process is bolded because it's important to point out that this is not an event. It really is a process that may take several weeks, several months. It may take a lot of time to get to a shared decision. So it is a process in which healthcare teams and people with hemophilia caregivers work together to make treatment decisions based on the clinical evidence that balances the risks and benefits of each treatment with the patient preferences and values in mind. So it was really this definition which we fell upon to create the tool. So it's around this definition. So we get into the risks and the benefits and the clinical evidence, and we also look at the patient's preferences and values within the tool, and you'll see that as I go through the slides. Why do we need shared decision-making in hemophilia? So I'm sure you're all well aware that there are several new products that have recently come to the market with even more in the pipeline. So the treatment landscape for hemophilia is becoming more complex. There's a lot of new treatment classes, new mechanisms of action. So there's a lot of new information that patients and healthcare providers need to understand if they're going to make a truly informed decision. There are trade-offs in harms and benefits of each treatment that the patient needs to be aware of and informed of. And as you know, hemophilia is a chronic condition that requires ongoing management, and the management may change over time as the patient changes, as new treatment becomes available. The tool, so this particular tool, provides the patients and the healthcare providers with the up-to-date information about each of the treatment options that is available to them. Ultimately, shared decision-making and research has demonstrated this, that it improves patient satisfaction, it promotes patient-centered care, and leads to better health outcomes for individuals with hemophilia. So when people with hemophilia are part of the decision-making, they're more adherent to their treatment and they have better outcomes. So what is the WFH shared decision-making tool? So the tool is an interactive web-based platform, and it's designed to guide patients and caregivers with their healthcare team through the process of making an informed and shared treatment decision. It provides the users with the tools and the knowledge that is needed to be part of that discussion. Before I get into a demo, there's a few things that I want to point out about the tool. So this SDM tool will not tell you what treatment option is best for you. So there are many decision aids out there that are kind of like an algorithm where you go through it, and at the end it tells you, well, based on all of the criteria we looked at, this is the best treatment option for you. This tool does not do that. It will provide you, as a user, the tools, the education, the reflective questions to equip you to be part of a decision-making with the healthcare team. This version of the tool does not include on-demand treatment regimes. It is based on the 5 main treatment classes of prophylaxis, which includes standard half-life, extended half-life, bispecific antibodies, rebalancing agents, and gene therapy. This version of the tool is for hemophilia treatment only, and the tool is evidence-based with up-to-date evidence on each treatment class, which will be updated regularly. So it's a living tool, essentially. The data or the evidence that is in the tool is based on the prescribing information or the package inserts that are issued by regulatory agencies, so either FDA, EMA, or Canada, or wherever the drug is licensed, and or phase 3 pivotal study results. Not everyone using this tool will have access to all of the treatment classes or the products included. So when within the tool, we have an attribute table, you can select which treatment classes you want to consider. And users can use the tool to learn about all of the treatment classes, even if they're not available to you or accessible to you at this time. You can still learn about them with the understanding that enhancing the knowledge of treatments can empower patients and be used for advocacy purposes. So with that, I will now go through a few slides of the tool and what it looks like. So this is a screenshot of the landing page of the shared decision-making tool. You can see here on the left, there's a navigation pane. It starts with the welcome, introduction, reflection, education, and summary. So these are the 5 main sections of the tool. The introduction is about shared decision-making and the shared decision-making tool. So that little video that I showed at the beginning of the presentation is what you would see here. So you would come here, you would watch that mini video, talks about shared decision-making and kind of introduces the concept of the tool. And then there's a few other landing points within the tool. I've got a few screenshots of what they are. I don't have all of the screenshots, but there's a screenshot of who the tool is for. So it's for people with Hem A or B and or their caregivers. You can see here on the left. And then over the right is the healthcare professionals. And then in the middle is the shared decision-making. So it's kind of them coming together to talk and have a discussion and make this decision together. And then we have the SDM journey. So this is a step-by-step guide for this shared decision-making journey. So you can see here, there's 8 steps in this journey. And if you hover over any of the steps, you get a call-out window, which has a bit more information. So you can see the first step is reflect on your life goals and your current treatment. And you can see on the left, the navigation pane, we have reflection. That's that step. Step number 2 and 3 are around education. So learning about the treatment options and being able to compare important attributes of each treatment. So that is this next step on the navigation, which is education. And then step 4, 5, and 6 are about having that discussion. So it starts with discussing with your loved ones, your peers, maybe your patient organization, preparing for your visit with your healthcare provider and or team, and then having that first visit with your healthcare team and having a discussion of the different treatments that are available to you. Step 7 is take the time to consider your options. So you'll see, like, going from number 6 down to 2, it's meant to be able to go back and revisit any of the steps prior. So if you have further questions that you may want to go back and reread in the fact sheets, it's meant to go back, watch the videos, reread the fact sheets, have more conversations until you're ready. And when you're ready, you go to number 8, which is that final meeting with your healthcare team where you come up with a treatment decision together. And that treatment decision might be, I choose to stay on the treatment that I'm on, or it might be, I'm going to tweak my current treatment, or I'm going to change it altogether. So this is kind of the journey. Then we get to reflection. So this is where we actually enter the tool, and the tool veers off into different paths. So depending on if you have Hem B or Hem A, you'll go into different paths. So you choose which hemophilia you have. And then you go into the reflection questions. So there are 3 questions here, and I'm just gonna sidetrack right now and go to the end where it says summary. So the summary is the personalized output of the tool. So whatever the patient puts in the tool, including these reflection question responses, will end up at the end, it'll end up on the output of the tool. And the output of the tool is essentially a PDF, a 1 or 2 page document where the patient can print it or email it to their healthcare team. So it has all of the information that the patient puts into it, and then it's a document that is meant to serve as a discussion point. So if we come back to these 3 questions, if the patient chooses to respond to them, this will end up in that personalized summary. So the questions are meant to get the patient to reflect on their hemophilia and or treatment. So the first question is, what are your goals or aspirations related to work, education, family? If the patient chooses to respond, they'll put their response in that gray area. How are your goals or aspirations impacted by your hemophilia? And then why are you considering a change to your therapy? Then we have a series of statements for reflection. So there's 8 different statements, and the patient or the user is meant to rate themselves between 0, not at all, and 100, very much, where they fall with each statement. So the first statement is, I feel tied to or constrained by my hemophilia treatment regime. And this person put 80%, which is very close to very much. So this person feels very constrained by their current hemophilia treatment regime. Managing my hemophilia takes a lot of effort, 40%. My hemophilia is always on the back of my mind, 60. I feel adequately protected against my bleeds, very much so. So they rate where they are for all of these 8 questions. And again, these end up on the personalized summary output at the end, and I'll show you that when we get there. And then, so you can see over on the left-hand side, we've gone from reflection to education. So we have treatment class education, and then we have a comparison table. So these are the 5 treatment classes I mentioned before for Hem A. So we have standard half-life, extended half-life, bispecific antibodies, rebalancing therapies, and gene therapy. If we had chosen the Hem B pathway, we would not see the bispecific antibodies here. So you can see gene therapy. We have a mini video on each of the treatment classes that the user will watch, and I'll show you one of these at the end. And we have a fact sheet on each of the treatment classes as well. So each of the fact sheets has identical questions for each of the treatment classes, except for gene therapy, which has a few additional questions that are only relevant to gene therapy. So the fact sheets are meant to provide more information, more detailed information. They can be downloaded, printed, and read kind of at leisure. And then we get to the attribute table. So you can see here on the left, compare treatment classes. So this is a table of the important attributes of each of the treatment classes. So you can see on the first column, we have the 5 treatment classes, and then we have 5 different topics that we thought were important that patients and healthcare teams would want to compare between the treatment options. So if you click on the first one, eligibility, if you click on it, it expands and it provides information on the eligibility. So under eligibility, we have approval status and the approved population. So the approval status essentially tells you how widely the approval is. So for standard half-life, there are multiple products that are widely approved. But then if you go down to hemostatic rebalancing therapies, for instance, there's 1 product with limited approval and 2 products in phase 3. So it gives you an idea of what is out there and available and approved. You may not have access to them, but this is what's approved. And it also gives you what is in the pipeline, what is in the late stage clinical trial that might be getting approval over the next year or couple of years. And then the approved population comes from the prescribing information. So who is eligible to take this? So you can see standard half-life, all ages, males, females, and children. Whereas hemostatic rebalancing therapies, it is adults 12 plus with and without inhibitors. So then if I click on administration, you'll see the eligibility collapse, and then we get more information on the administration. So you can see eligibility collapsed. We can still see, we have an idea of what's under there, but we don't see the full details. And then administration opens, and under administration, we have dosing, location, and follow-ups per year. So the dosing tells you how frequently you need to be dosed and how you'll be dosed. So injection, sub-Q, injection under the skin, or gene therapy. The location tells you where you can get dosed. And then the follow-up schedule per year. How often is it recommended that you go see your healthcare provider for maintenance for that treatment class? So you can see that gene therapy, frequent follow-ups for the first 2 to 3 years after treatment, whereas standard half-life, it's essentially once a year. Then if you click on efficacy, your administration collapses and you can see the efficacy. So under efficacy, we have annual bleed rate and factor level. And again, this data comes from the prescribing information. So we have a little graph for factor level, which tells you the average factor level and the change over time. So you can see the standard half-life, you probably see it's small here, but in the tool, it will be bigger and it can be expanded. But you've probably seen this graph is with the peaks and the troughs, and the extended half-life, it's peak with longer trough, and then bispecific antibodies, it goes up and is pretty much maintained. Although with bispecific antibodies and hemostatic rebalancing therapies, the factor levels don't actually change, but we're providing the effect that we know happens on the factor level, which is similar to a patient with mild hemophilia. And then, so we go to safety, efficacy closes, and under safety, we have years of clinical experience, adverse events, and warnings and precautions. Again, this comes from the prescribing information. This is currently being tweaked, so it will look different than it does right now, but it will have information on safety. And then the last column, we have psychosocial burden. So you can see these figures. So this is a concept. It's actually called hemophilia-free mind, and it comes from a paper that Cedric Hermans published a couple of years ago and his colleagues. And it is meant to reflect the daily burden of a patient on each of the treatment classes. So each of those red dots reflects a burden, and I'll look at that in a minute, of what the patient might be thinking about on a daily basis. So you can see standard half-life, there's a lot of things to think about. And then when you get down to the newer therapies, some of those red ones turn yellow because they're not daily, they're occasionally, and some turn green because you don't have to think about it anymore. So if you click on one of those, this is what you'll see. So you can see each of those red icons represents a different burden. So there's travel, physical activity, joint pain, injection schedule, bleeding risk. So somebody on standard half-life injection schedule, they're going to be thinking about that every day. And then, that will turn green as you get to the newer therapies where you don't have to think about it every day. And then, okay, so you can click on any of the treatment classes that you're interested in. So if you're on standard half-life, for instance, and you're thinking about bispecific antibody therapy, and that's what you want to talk about with your healthcare provider, you would click on those two, and those two get thrown over to the personalized summary output at the end, so that you have it there on your piece of paper when you go see your team to talk about. If you want all 5, you can choose all 5. 1, it doesn't matter. You can choose whatever you want. It will go to the end, the summary page. And then if you click on, you see that standard half-life kind of became blue. If you click on that, it gives you a overview of that treatment class. So you get the eligibility, the administration, efficacy, safety, and lifestyle, and that you can download and print. Whoops. So that was the comparison table. And now we're going to the last section. And the first part of the last section is suggested questions to discuss with your healthcare team. So we have a series of questions, and these are meant for the user or the patient to click on whatever questions they want to bring up with their healthcare team. So they'll click on whichever ones are of interest, and these go to the summary output so that you have them. You don't have to write them down. You don't have to try and remember what you wanted to talk about. You have them there, and you can add your own as well. And then we get to the personalized SDM tool summary. So the first thing here, so I'm showing you a series of slides essentially, but this will be 1 page, maybe 2 pages that you can download and email. So these are the reflection questions that we saw at the beginning with the answers that the patient put in. So you'll have those, and these are meant for the healthcare provider to look at, to read, to understand, and to use as a discussion point with the patient. Then we have the statements for reflection. So these 8 statements, I didn't mention this before, but these statements come from Core Heme questionnaire, which is a validated questionnaire on mental health status for patients with hemophilia. We've only taken 8, which are 8 that are relevant to shared decision-making. The Core Heme actually has many other questions. So here you can see we have the 8 questions, and then we have them where they rated themselves between 0, not at all, and 100. So the healthcare provider can look and easily see, okay, number 4, I feel adequately protected against bleeds. The patient put 4, 100, which is not at all. I can see it's reversed from the previous one, but it won't be. So the healthcare provider sees where they fall with each of these questions between 0 and 100. Then we have the 2 treatment classes that the patient is interested in discussing. That comes to the summary. And we have the questions that they wanted to talk about, which they clicked on, and any that they added would be here as well. So these 4 slides that I just showed you make up the personalized SDM summary. This is meant to print, download, send to the healthcare provider, and it's the basis for that discussion that they'll have. At the end, we have a survey. So we're launching the shared decision-making tool next Tuesday on August 1st. And we're opening with a 3-month open comment period. So from August 1st to November 1st, anybody who goes to the tool and goes through the tool, we're asking them to click at the end. There'll be a click to go to a survey and provide feedback. We have a series of questions that we're asking people to respond to, so that we can hear from our community what works, what doesn't work, what should be adjusted, tweaked, changed. And within the tool, we're also looking for, we want to pilot this with a patient healthcare team duo to actually use it for their shared decision-making discussion. So anybody who goes through the tool and does a survey and is thinking about making a switch in the treatment, we're asking them in the tool to provide, if they want to be part of the pilot study, to provide their correspondence, and we'll get in touch and we'll use those duos for an actual pilot study. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing this, but I'm actually going to go back and share that last video with you. Just bear with me. I believe it is here. Hang on. Video number 2. Here we go. Sorry to interrupt the video. So this is one of the treatment class videos. This one, I think it's on rebalancing agents. We have one for each of the treatment classes. So this is just to give you an idea of what these mini videos look like.
Hemophilia A and hemophilia B are inherited bleeding disorders caused by a lack of blood clotting factor 8 or factor 9. The lack of clotting factor results in decreased blood clotting. Rebalancing therapies belong to the non-factor therapy class and are a prophylactic treatment for hemophilia A and B. Your blood contains different elements that help with clotting, called procoagulants, and others that prevent clotting, called anticoagulants. There is a balance in the blood between procoagulants and anticoagulants. In a person with a bleeding disorder, this balance is tipped towards anticoagulation, resulting in more bleeding. Rebalancing therapies seek to decrease the levels of anticoagulants to restore this balance, increase blood clotting, and prevent bleeding. Rebalancing therapies are administered at home or in a hospital through an injection under the skin. They are administered on a daily to monthly basis, depending on the type of treatment. The dose or frequency may be adjusted to what works best for each individual and their hemophilia type. Factor levels do not change following treatment with rebalancing therapies, but the effect achieved is equivalent to having mild hemophilia. For more information, review the educational information in the SDM tool and consult with your healthcare team.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Donna. That was a really interesting presentation. And I wanted to congratulate you and your team for this. It's really a very interesting tool, and for all of the work that's clearly gone into it. It's good. There's a lot of work behind it. So thank you very much for that presentation. We'll go ahead now with our live Q&A. We have got a few questions that have come in through NHS staff. And I just want to remind our audience that if you have any questions, you can also ask them through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We did have a question about closed captioning, and we looked into it on the back end, and I'm afraid it seems it's not actually enabled for today, and I apologize for that. We will work to enable closed captioning on our future webinars. So to get to some of the questions that have come in, so we have had a question asking about whether there are any questions designed within this tool for women and girls with hemophilia. Thinking about treatment options for heavy menstrual bleeding or postpartum hemorrhage, the sorts of things that are kind of more specific to that population.
Good question. I am reluctant to say no. We should, but we do not at this point. This is version 1. We do have a 3-month open comment period. Please, like, it would be great to have that comment in the survey so that we can actually add it to our list of improvements to make. Thank you for that question.
And that actually brings me to maybe another sort of natural question, which is what sort of frequency will the updates be? How frequently do you think you will look at it and make actual live updates to it?
So the data portion fairly frequently, as you know, there's fast and furious new treatments coming out. So as soon as a new treatment is approved, for sure, we'll go in and make that update and any tweaks on the data related. For the actual design of the tool and those types of updates, you know, they'll be less frequent. Obviously, we'll come out with a version 2 based on the feedback that we receive and based on the pilot test that we do. That will probably be like 9 to 12 months after.
Okay. Right. And we've had a couple of questions asking whether there will be a tool, similar tool developed for other bleeding disorders, particularly the most common von Willebrand disease.
Yeah, we've received that. So we did have, by the way, a couple of focus groups. We had a patient focus group, a healthcare focus group, an industry focus group. We demoed it a few times. So we have received a few questions. That was one of them that was brought up a couple of times. So we do have that in our list of future enhancements.
Excellent, excellent. I've got a question here from our audience asking, will the short videos that are part of it, will they be available separately to the tool itself if somebody wanted to share them?
Yes, they will be available. I can't tell you how at this point, but we'll make sure that they're downloadable, and they'll probably be on our e-learning platform as a standalone, but I'll have to speak with Julia on that.
Right. That sounds great. They're certainly beautiful. I have to say, I have a great appreciation for those videos. They're very nicely done. We've had a question come in asking whether, how you might suggest healthcare professionals can start to encourage use of this or other tools. There's little time in the clinic. People have sort of limited time with their healthcare professionals. Do you have any tips about how they could bring this into practice?
So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. They do have limited time. And as you saw the tool, there's not a lot, it's very patient-centered, it's patient-focused. And what you didn't see is we do have a PDF specifically for healthcare professionals on how to use the tool. So in that PDF, we have the patient journey with the 8 steps, but we have a few additional steps at the beginning on how the healthcare provider can use the tool and can get the patient to actually go to the tool and learn about the treatment options before they come see them, before they come back to see the team. So I think there's going to be education for the healthcare providers, the teams, and the patients, and we're going to have to do a lot of promotion around that and the education.
Yeah, yeah. Another question that we've had come in is so this is an online tool and people are going to potentially be entering some personal information. Where is their data stored? Is it stored somewhere? Is it protected? Are there any issues around privacy?
The data is not stored anywhere, actually. So if a patient comes in, starts the tool, enters some information, leaves and comes back, that information will be gone. they can't come back and retrieve their information. I think we're looking into how long that delay will be. So it might be there, like if they leave it, if they close it, it's gone. But if they leave it open, it may be there for 24 hours or 48 hours. I can't remember what it is, but we are not storing any information. That was an intentional choice because we didn't want users to feel like they needed to kind of monitor what they were saying.
Yeah. And I guess that also has implications for use in different regions. Different regions have maybe different rules about data storage and data protection and that sort of thing. Interesting.
Yeah.
And thinking about different regions, how does this tool work if you live somewhere where, for example, not all of these treatment options are available, or potentially even none of them are available?
Yeah, so, I mean, that's another frequent question that we receive from the focus groups. So there's a few things. One of the questions that the patient can click on to bring to their healthcare provider is, which of these treatment classes and products are available to me? So that's part of the discussion. If none are, or very limited, there's still value in a patient understanding what's actually available out there in the world to, they can use this information for advocacy. They can use it as a goal. They can use it just by having more knowledge and empowerment from the knowledge.
Yeah, I think that also leads to maybe a related question, which is that in some places, so for example, if you look in the US, gene therapy has been approved for hemophilia A and B. So technically available, but is it accessible? And is there any way to look at that with the tool? Maybe that's a whole different question. Is not every individual in the US who has hemophilia is necessarily able to access something, even if it's been approved.
Yeah, so we did have a lot of discussions around that. And it's virtually impossible for us to be able to provide information on accessibility on an ongoing basis that's reflects the truth. So we just can't do that. So it needs to be part of the discussion. So when you go see your physician, you need to ask them what's available and what's accessible.
Right.
So maybe gene therapy is available, but I'm sorry, we're not paying for it yet. You don't have access to it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a reality for some people, for sure.
Yeah.
We've got a note here from Brendan Hayes from NHF, who has mentioned that they will place a link to this tool with some additional information on the NHF website. So that's something that's maybe useful for our audience as well. Another question that I know has kind of come up is the question of language and translations. At the moment, this is something that's available in English. Are there plans to translate or have partners translate the tool?
Yes, so we definitely want to translate it. It's not going to be like it needs to be translated in any language that the patient is speaking. So we're going to start with a translation in French and Spanish. We have a priority list of languages that we are going to translate into, but it's very expensive, as you know, to translate something like this. So we have funding for the first two languages. Once we get additional funding, we'll go down our list of translations.
And I was really interested in that sort of first phase of the tool, looking at preferences and priorities for the individual person with hemophilia. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how those questions were selected to be part of the tool? And I think maybe it's a little early and maybe we'll get this more in your open comment period, but it would be really interesting to know whether what the people with hemophilia are reporting as their priorities align with what their physicians anticipate or perceive to be their priorities, because I think every physician or healthcare professional wants to meet the priorities of their patient, but it'll be really interesting to see whether this tool identifies any gaps between perceptions of what those priorities are.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that is a really interesting question, and I think that will come out in that pilot study that we want to do. So the questions were selected based on our working group, based on the literature. There's a lot of literature on shared decision-making in hemophilia now that's come out in the past couple of years. So we went to the literature. We also, worked with the focus groups. So it's kind of, they were put together to prompt reflection. But obviously we can't get into the details and have so many questions. So they're as concise as possible while trying to get as much information as possible. So we'll see what happens when we put it out there. We'll get comments from everybody. And when it's actually in use, it will be really interesting to see that difference between the two.
Excellent. Thank you. I think I've had one more question come in here. So this is another interesting question. Shouldn't the payer also be part of the shared decision-making process, considering the high cost of especially some of these newer therapies?
Well, so the payer, I guess, I mean, this is a US-centric question, I think, because to me, the payer in US, it's like the insurance companies. Down to the individual, I don't know. I mean, it's almost a philosophical question. Like, is the payer going to be involved in a patient's preferences and values and what treatment they would like to have? The payer is going to kind of be like a safeguard against, no, we're not going to let you have this because we're not going to pay for it. But I don't know that they need to be part of the actual shared decision making. I don't know. It could be something that we discuss, but I'm not sure.
Certainly a very thought-provoking question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that concludes the questions that we've received from our audience. So I just want to thank you again, Donna, for taking the time to join us this afternoon and for your really interesting presentation and a really engaging Q&A. We appreciate your time and your expertise. And I'd like to thank also all of our audience members for taking the time to join us today. This recorded webinar will be available on Friday, July 28th at hemophilia.org under the events tab. If you select past events, you will find all of our archived webinars there. Also available in the events tab is the schedule of upcoming webinars in this weekly series. Please join us again next week for the next Wednesday webinar. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and have a great week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.